Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host, Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about Wonder Woman! We finally saw it!
So, as always, there will be spoilers in this episode, so spoiler warning for those of you who have not yet seen it.
Which we probably were the last people on Earth to not see it.
I don't know, there's probably still some out there that haven't seen it yet, but...
Parents like us who can't seem to get away.
Yes. So, before we jump into it, let's talk about our review and summary. Brief summary is... Diana is grows up on an island for the Amazon, and she is the daughter of the Amazon queen, so comes into play during World War I that she actually goes off the island and goes to seek her destiny, which is to destroy Ares, the god of war, but some other things ensue during that, and so that's just my brief summary. I tried to include as many details in there because you say that I don't get to enough details. And my review, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. There were some things that kind of took me out of it. There were some moments where the CGI kind of was a little bit too
Lego-ish,
rubbery. I would say is that even though Diana is a god and she is Wonder Woman, I don't think that she can move that way because that's obvious computer graphics stuff there. So otherwise, I thought it was very good. Next week I'll talk a bit more about that because the same with both movies that we saw last week were Spider-Man and Wonder Woman. That there were moments that I'm like, seriously. You couldn't have done a better job with the computer graphics. You paid enough for it. So, it takes me out of it every time that I can see like, oh, that's obvious computer graphics.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, I really enjoyed the movie.
So, my turn. Brief summary. Diana is the only child on this island of lady Amazon warriors who are kick-ass. She grows up fighting and becoming a warrior. She meets Steve, who's a World War I pilot who is actually a spy, or an American spy. No, he's an American, but he's working for the British.
Yes.
Pretending to be German. There we go. And so he convinces her to come to the war. Well, actually, she convinces herself to come to the war. Yeah. And she goes there and she kicks some booty and she wants to destroy Ares, and it's pretty kick-ass. I don't know. Like, she wins the day. And all of this is done in a flashback for her. Essentially, she's remembering why she decided to come to our side of the force field, I guess, because she was always on Earth, so I can't say come to Earth because she was always on Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know what that thing would be
Come
called.
off the island.
Yes.
Thessia.
And my review was that, oh my lordy, let me just say, this is by far the best DC movie we have had in a long time.
May I remind you yet again, the bar is set very low for that. DC, well, I don't know. I don't think it's better than Dark Knight, but...
No, I don't think it's better than Dark Knight, but I do think that it rivals the Marvel movies in terms... Because the Marvel movies have all been better than the DC movies. But this movie rivals those. So... Even
though the antagonist is still two-dimensional.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it makes up for it for the fact that they made Wonder Woman so awesome. So awesome.
All right.
And, yeah, we'll go more into that later in this podcast.
So, I really want to focus on, there are a few quotes from Steve, from Captain Steve. I keep wanting to call him Captain Kirk because he is Captain Kirk in another movie.
What movie
My
is that?
my obsession with Star Trek. So, with Captain Kirk, she's there with him, and there are a couple of things that he says, but I really want to focus on his main point, which is kind of the theme of the movie, which is maybe it's not about what you deserve, but what you believe in. And this is the struggle for Diana throughout the entire movie. Is what do people deserve? What is deserved in justice, and what is deserved in all aspects of life. And she looks at it as very black and white in the very beginning.
Well, because she comes from a very black and white realm.
Yeah, a very black and white society. Mm-hmm. And she encounters a lot of those shades of gray as she comes into our world, especially with getting to know the background of the captain and getting to know the background of his team. And everyone has their faults and has their qualms about them. And that's the thing about what made this movie so good for me, was that I've really resonated with the theme, was that there is not a single person that is perfect. Mm-hmm. That nobody gets what they deserve, pretty much, or they get what they deserve, but there's consequences. And across the boards, that's exactly what I think this movie is doing, is talking about. It doesn't matter what you deserve. It's what matters is what you believe. Mm-hmm. And especially for Diana, especially at the end there when she's fighting Ares, is that she's like, they may deserve it, but I believe in love. And I think that especially with what happened last week, and since we talked about that last week in our podcast, is that this exactly is what mirrors the gospel, is that love conquers all. That doesn't matter what we deserve, that love is more important. That, believing in love, believing that love can conquer hate and conquer those bad parts of the human spirit and the dark places within us. And in fact, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. Surprise, surprise. Was the Hidden Brain podcast from this last week, which is actually a throwback from one of their older ones. But they're doing this whole series on redefining yourself. And so there was this psychology doctor on, and she was talking about how dreams kind of help, or the dreams that people have for themselves end up hindering them the most. Like, for instance, the people who, always dream of going out with that crush or whatever, that they in turn don't end up asking that person out. Mm-hmm. Because, their fantasy is way better than a reality than that they could ever accomplish. And we do this to ourselves so often with anything, with our jobs, with anything else, is that we dream something so much bigger than we can actually do, because when we encounter resistance at all to that, we just want to give up.
Yep, and we back away. Mm-hmm.
And I think that very much has to do with this movie, with what is going on, because of what I'm going to talk about more here in just a second, but that the concept of faith without works is dead. What James was talking about in that epistle that was put into the canon for the Bible, which, is that, as we've talked so many times before, that faith is that driving force, that thing that makes you want to be the change, that makes you want to see the world as a better place. That throughout all of these pieces of media, throughout everything that we talk about, for me, it makes me want to be a better person. I'm sure it made that moment where Diana gets up and, walks across the no man's land. I'm sure that you're like, yes, I want to go out there. I want to beat up some Nazis and,
Yeah, if you weren't
well, they weren't
cheering
Nazis
at that,
in World War One. They were just Germans.
They were just Germans at that point. But still, if you did not, get excited when she did that and you're just like, yeah, then you have no soul. I'll say it.
Well, and that's I think the major point that Steve is making in the movie, especially from this other saying that he got from his father, that he said his father told him, was that you can either, when something troubles you, you can either do nothing or you can do something. And then he goes on to say that he's tried doing nothing, and I think that's true for all of us. And I mean, this was an instigator for Diana, was to help her to see that she needs to get out there and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think throughout all of this movie, despite the gray areas, that she's still going to fight for what she believes in. And that ultimately is that thing, is that it doesn't matter what you deserve, it's about what you believe. And I think that for all of us, this is a very important time to ask ourselves, what do we believe? Do we believe in a world where women can be strong and run across the no man's land and, take on these big goals? Because, in essence, they're fighting this injustice that has been done to them throughout their entire lives. They're seen as lesser because they're women. And, I'm coming out of a man's voice. This is probably weird for me to be saying, but...
No, but I think it's important to hear that it's totally okay to be a man and be a feminist.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is what the point of it is that faith should drive you. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what that Frederick Buechner quote that I used in the first episode was about, is that faith is homesickness. Faith is a lump in the throat. It's less a position and more a movement towards. And that's exactly what, for me, faith is. Mm-hmm. Is that everything that's driving you to make this world a better place. And I think that ultimately comes down to what Jesus was saying with the kingdom is here, the kingdom is now. I'm tapping into my very Christian roots here. I'm going to be very preachy today, maybe. But
I was about to say, you have a little preachy today.
Is that Jesus was saying very much was that the kingdom is here, the kingdom is now. He's defining a kingdom that there is no more war, there is no more suffering, there is all of these utopic ideals.
Mm-hmm. And that's really what Diana is trying to strive for.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we should do, is we believe in this world, in this utopic society where everyone is equal. Is that, yes, that we are all different and we celebrate our differences, but we're equal. That there is no hierarchy. It's all just the same. That we are a pure democracy in that instance. Across boards, across the globe. It doesn't matter if you're young or old or rich black or white or rich or poor or anything, is that you're equal. And I think this is a defining thing that I'll get into later, but this is very much what grace and mercy are. Those two words are either getting you what you deserve or not getting what you deserve, or getting what you don't deserve. Mm-hmm. That grace is getting what you don't deserve, and mercy is not getting what you deserve. And I think that's, for all of us, that's what God embodies throughout scriptures. For me, for the Christian scriptures, is that there is this God who continually gives grace and mercy to God's people. That we deserve crap. We deserve nothingness and
we're not,
to destroy ourselves.
We're not a very nice people.
But God grants us mercy, and that we are given more second chances every day. And if anything, I want to err on the side of love when it comes to that. That I believe in love. I believe in this society where everyone is equal. That we are going to, that this is the kingdom of God in my mind, and that's what I strive for, and that's what faith is, and that's what I see in all of these movies, and that's why we started the podcast. That's why I'm doing Honest Faith. That's why I'm doing Post Church Christians on Facebook. That's kind of my drive, and so that's, I think, was very evident in this movie. So that's, I think, throughout the entire thing is moving into that gray world. It's moving from the black and white into the gray, which is, it very much is that fish out of water story that was going on there.
Oh yeah, and you could definitely see it. Talking about fish out of water, which I have to put in there, a whole new world. Because seriously, like, she's like in this like utopia, this wonderful society where all of these people live on an island. They sure, there's fighting, but it's training. Like, they're trying to make each other better. They're not trying to push each other down. They're trying to build each other up. Well, I guess except for her mom a little bit. But I think her mom was doing it more as a protective role and not as a, I don't want you to overthrow me role. Because she knew that that's what her destiny was supposed to be anyway. But one thing that I really like about this movie, and the director has even said this in multiple interviews too, is that she purposely did it to where we are experiencing the events through the eyes of Diana. Like, we are seeing, like, what is going on around her and kind of experiencing it the way that she's going to experience it. Mm-hmm. And since she has been living on this island filled with these Amazon warriors who are, I would say, well, they're more than human. They're like...
Yes.
I don't know. I kind of want to say they're kind of like on the same equivalent of like angels. How like angels are kind of like, even though we are above angels, angels have more powers than us. You know what I mean? Like, we're more loved than angels are.
Sure.
I guess. Anyway, so, well, because they were essentially here to sent to us to protect humans.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, they were designed for us. And I like how, since she's not ever been around humans before, that she is now experiencing what it is to actually be human at the turn of the last century. And it's very different than where she was coming from. Can you just imagine, like, just kind of be thrown out of your world and kind of, like, walking around going, like, wait, what now? It's almost as if, like, I guess traveling to another country would be the closest thing that I could think of, and experiencing a different culture. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like seeing in this movie, I really like how we actually saw that perspective of what it was like being a woman at the turn of the century, because we don't see that very often. Most of the movies that we have that are around that time are either geared towards the wars that happened at the beginning of the last century, or they're like romance. You know, they're not adventure, like following a woman around. It's like more of a love story. So it's really nice to see something different.
Yeah, but I do have to say I was going to include this in my review, but part of the thing that I didn't like about this movie was I didn't think that Diana, Wonder Woman, should have slept with Steve. Seriously. I think that diminished her character. And I think that you can develop a romance without sex.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know. I just think that was a little bit too, like, writer's room. Let's throw this in there so that it really develops that relationship between the two.
And I think too that that's just a normal Hollywood trope that Hollywood doesn't realize they don't need to have anymore.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a cop out.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's too easy.
It's too easy. Yep. And talking about that, like, I think too that it's we finally realized that because we were seeing the world through her eyes at the turn of that century, how absurd it was the way that women were treated. Like, the fact that when she's first there, like, she goes into the the committee or whatever it's called,
the War Council, or
where they're talking about strategy and that kind of stuff. And as soon as she walks in, they realize there's a woman there. Everybody just shuts up. Like, really? Like, I mean, I get it. And it's not like they were shutting up because, like, oh, look, there's a new person in the room. It was definitely, we got to stop talking because there's a woman in the room.
For her sensitive ears.
Yes, for her very sensitive ears. Little do they know, she has seen more combat and trained harder than any of those guys in that room. And it is absurd the way that women have been treated. Like, that's absolutely, absolutely true. Especially the fact that people, well, I say people in broad spectrum because women too, since they have been told that women have to be like this and be sensitive, have also pushed that on other women as well too.
Yeah.
And, I mean, women, we're not, women aren't as sensitive as people think that we are. I think a lot of us have to learn to put on a sensitivity mask sometimes in order to feel like they're being accepted. No, seriously though, I've been put into those situations, like when somebody tells me something that is sad, and if I don't feel sad about it, then I'm like, oh, like I put on my sensitivity mask, and like I guess I will feel sad too, even though I don't really feel sad about this or upset about this.
No, I'm laughing because I know you, and the first 3 years of our relationship, you would constantly define yourself as, I'm a delicate flower. And
that was in jest.
Yeah, and just, you are anything but a delicate flower. You are very rough and tumble, and
I mean, I am an empath, which I think is different than being sensitive.
Yes,
that's two separate things. I don't know, like in terms of like, for example, like fainting. For example, like a lot of times people like think that women need to feel faint if they see something like gross or horrific, and I don't feel that way well, it used to be at certain points in time at certain things I would. Like Fight Club, I couldn't get over. But I think that's more like tapping into my empath portion of me, of being like seeing all the violence done to other people and then like just imagining it being done to me. I just, which I think is different. But
okay.
Anyway, enough about me. Back to Wonder Woman. As she was walking through the streets and encountering everybody, it was almost like she was being too bold. Like everybody was so shocked about how like brazen and bold that she was. Like, what? She said what? Like, she can't go out into no man's land. What is she thinking? And Steve's like, no, she can handle herself. Like, I've seen her in action. Like, no, just let her do it. And I think that happens a lot in society still. Like, women are still seen as being too bold, especially in the boardrooms, in meetings, when we are throwing out our ideas about what could be done to improve things or maybe stuff that needs to change. We are seen as being very brazen and kind of being a... Can I say the B word on here? Are you going to let me say the B word?
It's not about me. It's about, the sensitivity ratings for other podcast services.
Oh, sure,
like
sure.
iTunes.
Well, being a B is what I'll say. But if in the same boardroom, if a man says the exact same thing, then he's being like hailed as an innovator and as like this great like thinker and being praised for being outside of the box. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very double standard. But and then the clothes too. Like, first of all, I'm happy that they raised her neckline, so she's not like Wonder Woman with all this cleavage, and it's more armor type and not like the cloth like it was back in the TV series. And but I still wish that she was covered up more. But that's just my own like, practicality thing. I know she's a god, so like, she's tougher than most people, but still. And I do like how when she's shopping for clothes, she brings up the absurdity in women's fashion as well too. Like she's trying out her kicks and like is like getting down and like squatting and that kind of stuff. And she's like, "How can you fight in this? Like this isn't practical." It's like, yes, absolutely true. It's not practical, and that's one of the things that the second wave feminism movement was fighting for, was like getting women out of these ridiculous, tight, impractical clothes and getting them into pants. Like pants have so much freedom. Like we can do so much more in pants. It's awesome.
Well, and I mean, this is very much having to do with the way that the wars that changed our societies. Like in World War II, mm-hmm. the women were out doing the men's jobs while they were off fighting wars. I mean, that's why Rosie the Riveter was, such an icon, was because she was wearing pants. Mm-hmm. She was in the factories making these things, saying that women can do it just as good as men can do it. And this is something that I'm surprised how long it took us. I mean, there's still some gender biased rules against women in the military. That they can't fight on the front lines and stuff like this. And it's kind of like, what? Why?
Especially when there are other countries who allow that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And women can be leaders, and they can be generals, as you can clearly see. Like, she's the one that is leading them, like, into the battle. Like, they are following her. And I do like, as well, seeing that there was balance, too. Like, she not only was this tough woman, like, leading her friends into battle, but she also was heartbroken when the town was destroyed. Like, but I don't think that was showing her, like, her womanly side. I thought that is showing your humanity. Like, I feel like if there was a man in her position who had just saved a town, a village, and then that next day the village was destroyed despite all of their efforts, I feel like they would have felt the exact same emotions that she felt.
Yeah, except he would be more brooding.
True.
In the movie. And that's why they do that with Batman and Superman, is they make the brooding, which it doesn't make for a good movie. Mm-mm. That's all that Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was I'm going to brood at you, you're going to brood at me, let's brood at the same time.
Well, and that's why third wave feminism is so important, because, like, men can do more than just brood if they don't get their way. Like, they can be upset. They can cry, for goodness sake. Like, sometimes a good cry is going to be better and, like, make you feel better so you can just move on. Brooding, all you do is just think about it, and it's not helpful. It just makes matters worse sometimes.
Brood, brood, brood.
We're just going to sit on this cliff and we're just going to brood together.
You're referring to Game of Thrones with the...
with Tyrion and Jon.
Tyrion and Jon with their, this is my brooding cliff. You do it better than I do. Tyrion has the best lines.
I know. We'll talk about that, though, in future. Like, that's where we're going to come to soon. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of want to throw it in there, too, because I know that there's still kickback and pushback on third wave feminism, what we're in right now. But just as a reminder, part of third wave feminism is also giving men the right to show their more, like, human side, their more emotional side. Being more involved in family planning and being involved in taking care of the children if they want. And it's all about letting people do what they want and not feel ashamed for doing what they want to do for their own family. Mm-hmm. Like, if they want to be a stay-at-home dad, great, let them be a stay-at-home dad. If a woman wants to be a stay-at-home mom, that should be her choice to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's going to be great. And that's kind of what I hope that Hollywood is now going to shift more into, now having more of these female leads. And now Captain Marvel is going to be coming out
in a while.
It's
not coming out until
It's going to be the next one. I'm still, like, marking on my calendar. This is going to be the next great female superhero movie. There's not many out there. Okay.
There is not many out there.
And I don't want to count Catwoman.
No, that is not a female superhero movie. That's just a hot mess of nothing.
Yes, a hot mess of nothing.
A hot mess of nothing.
Just a big, fat.
It's not even a movie. You can't even call that a movie.
No.
If you want to talk about bad CG, movie was just...
Talk about unpractical uniforms for fighting in.
I know. I have no idea why Halle Berry agreed to do that.
Who knows? Well, anyway, where do we go from here?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that the church needs to do is in itself cross no man's land. Is to stop doing these things. Let faith drive you rather than keep you in your pews. And this is something that I've been writing about for a while now. It's been pretty much, that's all I write about, is why you should be a Christian not just on Sundays and give up only 1 hour of your week and 10% of your money if that's what you do, if you tithe. But in fact, if if you believe the message, it should move you to do something. You shouldn't just sit there and dream about it and twiddle your thumbs and like, oh, well, my priest is going to take care of it, or my pastor is going to do the work. No, it's on you. You're the one to get up and do something. If something troubles you, either do something about it or do nothing. And that's what it is that this is what, I've gotten into so many Facebook conversations this week. And one of those things being thrown at me a lot is, well, we're in that age where Jesus said in Revelations that you're lukewarm, he's going to spit you out of his mouth. And it's exactly that. In fact, no, more than that is that, because nobody's doing anything. Even the person on this, who's average church Joe that, goes to church doesn't do anything after it. It doesn't move them. Yeah, they hear a nice sermon once a week. Yeah, it doesn't change them. They're still going to be the same person. Yep. And, they go to Bible study or whatever. That doesn't make your life better. That just, continues to teach you the scriptures that should drive you to do something. And this is what I think is so wrong with the church nowadays, which is why I think millennials are leaving the church, is because... Oh, wait, it's been 10 seconds. Has there been another blog post about millennials leaving the church yet? But this is why. It's because it doesn't change them. It's useless. Yep. If you look at the church that way, there's no reason to be there. And that's why I believe that Jesus has left the building.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I was feeling kind of empty in a church setting, because I, even growing up, I was like part of youth group, and this is another one of those millennial things. Like in youth group, we did a lot of service projects. We did a lot of stuff in the community. And that was the stuff that I really enjoyed. I liked going to help out at the soup kitchens, and I liked helping out at the food banks. And as adults, the only real volunteer opportunity I had was working with the children. And I am not that person. Like, yeah, there are people out there who that's, what they like to do for the volunteers, helping with the children, but not me. Like, I want to be out there in the soup kitchens. I want to be able to, like, help build homes and to, like, help maintain somebody's yard, even, for goodness sake. And there was no opportunities like that as adults.
Well, and this also brings up another point which I wanted to make, because I really wanted to use this imagery, was that this is something that I loved in the movie, was when Wonder Woman was taking out the sniper, and she destroys the church steeple. Is that I loved that, because I think that was so much a symbolic gesture of breaking what traditionally was a man's area. Is, the church was the man-led area, and I think this, even if it wasn't meant as a symbol for that, is that I think there are so many amazing women who are leading our church nowadays that, there's, even on Twitter, if you follow them, there's like Rachel Held Evans, there is Nadia Bowles-Weber, there's some great women who are, have some amazing theological thoughts. And this is something that has always traditionally been a man's area. And I think this is something where the church should have crossed no man's land a long time ago, is saying there is no hierarchy. No man is better than another man. Is that we are going to tear down these walls and say no more glass steeple. That women should be leaders too. Doesn't matter what Paul wrote, because Paul was a human being. And Paul was not God. Paul's words were not God's words. I know that's the most controversial thing I've said in a while. But is that, Jesus even had women following him, and they were prominent. And this is why the church leaders of his time didn't like him. It was one of those things, was that Jesus was saying there is no hierarchy.
And plus, like, the early Christian churches, like at the very, very beginning, who was leading the groups? It was women. Women were the ones that were inviting people into their homes to have supper, to share bread. The reason why that they were so, like, enamored with Christianity was because they were allowed to be equal to men in the faith. And then that was taken away from us. Thank you.
I blame what is his name? Irenaeus, the guy who put together the scriptures and fought the Gnostics on a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, history.
Thanks, history. So, yeah. Speaking of which, I mean, this is where we come to the point of where do we go from here? Is that women's rights are human rights, and rights for Black people are human rights, and rights for Hispanics are human rights, and that, you may say all of these things that about these groups, and I even had a few Facebook conversations about why Black Lives Matter is not the same as the KKK. Because the KKK is wanting to put in place a power structure, is to say that white people are better than everybody else. But Black Lives Matter is saying, no. We're taking down the power structure to say, stop killing black people.
Recognize our humanity.
Exactly.
That's all they want. Just recognize that I am a person too, and don't just fire at me because I'm black.
By the way, here's a fun fact about World War I, was that it was after World War I, and when the black men were coming back from fighting in World War I, that's when most of the Confederate statues and monuments were put into place in most southern states. It was basically as a way to say, you don't belong here. And so, there's your fun fact for this podcast. Sorry, that's another controversial thing that I'm going to say today.
That's okay. I mean, we were pretty controversial last week. I think that our listeners probably know how we feel about this anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Talking about last week, let's talk about the upcoming weeks. So we are finally catching up on some awesome things. There's some things that have come out recently that we were really, really excited to talk about, such as Game of Thrones. We're going to go through the whole season, and then we're going to talk about it.
Well, whole first half of the last season.
Yeah, so. I think people knew what I meant, I hope. And then also the Defenders we're going to be talking about soon, too. But what's the breakdown, like week by week?
Week by week is next week we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. And I do have some things to say about that. We are going to be talking about some things, especially with kind of the same kind of struggle with discovering of who you really are. I know we've talked about that before, but if you have any input or feedback to give us on that, give us a call on our voicemail number, which I will be giving out here in just a second.
Yep.
And, reach us on social media, which I also will be giving out here in just a second.
Yep.
But after that will be American Gods. That will be on 9/3. So that will be, we'll be talking about American Gods Season 1, which kind of stayed very close to the book in some ways and kind of didn't. And
just as, of course, spoiler warnings for all of these, blah, blah, blah. But if you haven't seen American Gods yet and you want to listen to our podcast about it, just a heads up, if the sex in Game of Thrones makes you uneasy, you really should probably stay away from American Gods then. Well, unless you want to be one of those people that fast forward through it, and you probably could and still understand what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, she is a fertility god, and so that's why.
Not just her, but with the Jinn, too.
Oh, yeah, with the Jinn, too. There is a gay sex scene in the movie, in the show, which is, I thought was very progressive of Stars to put in there to include.
It was, but it's, I mean, I'm not necessarily a prude, but the length of them
that's
the thing.
That's the thing, is the length of them. That it's kind of bordering on porn with a much better plot line.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But we'll get into that on our show in a few weeks. Then we're trying to decide what to do first, either the Defenders or Game of Thrones. I'm thinking that Defenders maybe should go first because we'll be finished with that sooner than we are with Game of Thrones. And only a minor note on Defenders so far is Danny Rand really needs to grow up.
My chi!
We'll talk about that in a few weeks.
Well, maybe. I mean, we're only a few episodes in. Hopefully,
he gets better. Hopefully. he's right now. He is probably Marvel's weak link.
Spider-Man has more maturity than he has.
I know, and Spider-Man's only like 15.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that next week.
Yes, anyway.
So if you have anything to say about Spider-Man or about American Gods or about
The Defenders.
Defenders or Game of Thrones even, talk to us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Real Honest Faith. We are on Twitter at Real Honest Faith. We are also on Tumblr and Reddit. I don't check Tumblr all that often. Reddit does send notifications to my phone, and Tumblr does send notifications to my phone. So if you do send a message through there, we'll look at it and we'll check it out.
Yeah. You can email us too.
You can email us at honestfaithconversations@gmail.com. But ultimately, if you want to be on the show, even if you want to feature your own podcast, if you're a podcaster yourself and be like, hey, this is so-and-so from this show, do that on the voicemail. And here's the number to call, 720-372-3879. And give your input on some of those shows. Talk about some of the moral things that you pulled from those movies, and we may even use you on the show. That'd be cool. As part of our own conversation.
Yeah. Do it. I dare you.
So you can also find us on our website, which is thehonestfaith.com. You can also find my blog and my book on there as well. You can buy my book and read it. I'm also have ordered 2 to sign, and we'll probably have a contest or something coming up here soon.
Yeah.
For those of you who want a signed copy of my book, I don't know who you are, but if you want one, we'll get you one. And so, yeah. Thank you so much for listening. We really enjoy doing this, and just the fact that anybody actually listens to us is fantastic.
Yeah, it makes me all warm and gooey inside, like a chocolate chip cookie.
So, with all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.